everybody, and welcome to the Feminine Principle Podcast, Astrology for Authentic Living. My name is Mel with Energetic Principles.
And I'm Shawna with Neo Feminine Astrology.
And in this week's episode, we will be discussing the astrology for the week of July 3rd, and what we have titled, Find Your Inner Phoenix. And the purpose of this podcast is to give inspiration and guidance for this week with real-life examples of what to expect.
The three major aspects that we'll talk about in this episode are Mercury square Uranus, which we're deeming emotional breakdown/breakthrough. The second aspect is the Sun opposite Pluto, which we're calling self-renovation and regeneration. And the third aspect is the full moon in which we're calling building character.
Yes.
Yes. So we're really excited to share guidance and inspiration regarding this entire week with you. And we encourage you to remember that some of these transits are going to influence you more than others based on what's happening in your life right now and your personal birth chart. So notice what resonates with you most, take what you like, and always use your intuition and logic to decide what's best for you.
Yes, because you know you best. So let's kick off this week's episode with a quick rundown of the moon's path through the zodiac and some other minor aspects for all you astro geeks out there. So for the moon path, we're going to kick off the week with the waxing moon in intense Scorpio, where she will stay until moving into the jovial sign of Sagittarius late Tuesday or early Wednesday, depending on where you are in the world. So then she's going to move into Capricorn, the I mean business sign of Capricorn on Friday, as she apexes her way to the full moon on Saturday, which Shawna and I will talk about later in this podcast. And then after all that lunar action over the weekend, she's going to slip into the detached realms of Aquarius late Sunday, which we might all be grateful for. And so some other notes of some planetary action this week. It's actually a pretty active week, a lot of changes going on. And so Tuesday, July 4th, our luscious gal Venus will be moving into sociable Gemini on the same day we celebrate our festivities here in the U.S. And then on Wednesday, July 5th, Mercury is going to move into Leo, and the Sun also makes a few contacts where it will square Jupiter in Libra and then trine Neptune in Pisces. And then on Friday, July 7th, Mercury will sextile Venus as both planets get settled in their new signs, Leo and Gemini respectively. So you can see that we have a lot of action going on this week. Things are moving along. We're changing signs. We're having full moons. We're hanging out with Pluto. Shawna, what's going on here?
Stuff,
I know a lot of astrologers have kind of been talking about this week, and there's the power that is building in this week, which is going to lead us to that solar eclipse, which we'll be talking about next month. But yeah, let's kick it off with our first aspect here, which we have Mercury in Cancer squaring Uranus in Aries. And what we have titled emotional breakdown/breakthrough. So yeah, Shawna, let's say real quick though, when it's going to happen, so you know, that will be Tuesday, July 4th at 5:51 p.m. Pacific time, which is Wednesday, 12:51 a.m. Universal time, and then 10 a.m. Aussie time. And that's going to be at 28 degrees Cancer and Aries. So Shawna, kick us in with the quote you have for this transit.
Yes. So this quote is by the Vietnamese Buddhist monk and peace activist Thich Nhat Hanh. I hope I didn't butcher that name too much. So he says, "For things to reveal themselves to us, we need to be ready to abandon our views about them." And I love this quote for this aspect for Mercury, which is the mind, squaring Uranus, which is breakthroughs and revolutionary ideas. So this aspect, it really brings to mind this light bulb moment that you might have this week. And it encourages us to, as he says, to abandon our views, to totally change everything, to be open to to be open to something unconventional, to be open to something totally outside the status quo, which is Uranus. And we titled this emotional breakdown / breakthrough because it might feel like a breakdown. You might feel like, oh my gosh, I don't have any options, or this isn't working. And that's because a breakthrough is imminent and there's something different that you haven't tried yet. So it may feel like something is broken in order for you to realize what the other possibility is.
Yes. And I love that you use the word broken, because let's keep in mind, if you've been listening to our podcast and keeping up with what's going on, Mercury has been touching down all over the place. So this is kind of like, almost like a it's a last hurrah why it's in the sign of Cancer. And, Shawna's absolutely right about that breakthrough energy, because, Uranus is all about, putting things into our, awareness, giving us some type of revelation that, brings new information to light so we can look at things differently. And it is an applying square. So the optimist in me wants to look at this like, okay, I've already squared Jupiter in Libra. I've conjuncted Mars and the Sun, and I've opposed Pluto. I've done all the work. Can I break through already?
I love that.
So, hopefully we're all going to have some revelations at this time that allow us to kind of really put that last final tweak on our own Mercury transits that have been happening. But if you do still break down, all that means is there was just a last piece of the puzzle that had to be addressed before you can move on with a new perspective in mind.
Yeah, and something that I've really been stewing on and sitting with this week is that sometimes change, even though it's beneficial, it can actually feel unpleasant, or it can feel intense, or it can feel overwhelming in that moment when it's happening. And then afterwards, there's this sense of relief and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm really glad that happened, but it was intense when it was happening. And so, Mel, I wonder, as you're speaking about, it's like, okay, all of these things have happened, and then there's that relief of the breakthrough. And I think that, what I want to encourage everyone to view this is, if there's a change that's happening, just because it's intense doesn't mean that something bad is happening. And I think also the nature of Uranus is that your capacity for change is always rewarded. Your capacity for doing things different, for having an open mind, that's really what's being asked of us here, to have a flexible viewpoint, to have a flexible mind with things. And so the more that you explore new possibilities, the more that things are going to open up, and the more that it's going to just flow and actually be easier for you when you are open in that way.
Yes, I love that, because, let's remember that Uranus rules a sign of the detached sign of Aquarius. So there is a detachment to Uranus. And here we have this Mercury in Cancer who is not detached at all. Is very much attached. Yes, very attached. We're talking like, Gorilla Glue up in here. So just know that Uranus in Aries, which can fly by the seat of its pants and take off down any new, path that kind of comes our way. That's kind of the challenge here, is how can we detach our minds, and our perceptions enough to get that breakthrough and, and get us out of living in the past, because keep in mind, we got Cancer action coming here, and there's a lot of, reminiscing that happens in Cancer, and kind of remembering how things once were and how great they were back then, even though who knows if they were that great, in the moment everything looks great, as it was then. But, and Uranus is all about the future, going into what's next. So let's dispel what it is that's been the past and honor it for what it is, but be able to move on, because, one of the things that could be keeping us from this breakthrough as well, besides the whole past consideration, is also just worrying, because I almost had my own breakthrough this morning before we started this podcast, where I realized, as a Cancer, I know we worry, but I guess I never really thought about it because it's always been my own process. But this morning, I really realized how much I worry on a level that I don't even realize I'm worrying, if that makes sense. Okay, Shawna, can you relate to that at all?
Yes.
So just keep that in mind when, all these considerations come up, and maybe it's not that you're like sorting things out. Maybe you're actually just worrying about things, and you just kind of detach a little and, let new things come to light. So, yes.
Yeah. And one last note about this too is that it may be interesting to reflect on what was happening around the time when Mercury conjuncted Uranus. That was around the first week of May. That was when Mercury was retrograde, and then it stationed direct right basically on Uranus. And so,
yes.
So around these topics of, being flexible, being open to new opportunities, changing your viewpoint on things, what was happening around May? Maybe nothing was happening. Maybe there was something that you were working out intellectually or exploring new options. How does today relate to that point in time? Are there similar things that are coming up, or maybe there's even a chance to test out some of the ideas or some of the things that you were thinking about in early May?
I like that a lot, Shawna, because let's not forget that when the conjunction was made, with Mercury to Uranus and starting that cycle over again, it wasn't just a quick pass by and we started all over. This was a retrograde action. And I actually dug up some dates for us just to if you're any journalers out there, to kind of go back and see what it was that you were, thinking back then. But the first conjunction was March 26th, and then it retrograded over that point on April 28th. And then it did the final pass back over in forward motion on May 9th. So each one of those days, if you were to go back and look, if you write it all, you might see these little trigger points of the first kind of test with the new cycle, and then the retrograde rethinking, and then the, forward motion, and we're doing it again. So I love that you bring up the test, Shawna, because it's the applying square. We can put these ideas into action, into motion, and to find breakthroughs around where we're really starting this new Aries cycle. And especially since it has to do with identity in Aries and us really rebirthing these new yous. So I feel like that kind of has a play in all this. Because with Mercury, especially with Uranus there, it's almost like a veil is being, lifted off our eyes. We might not have been quite seeing the full picture. But I think we're going to get a little more insight, into that, and really much so probably when we get that opposition, later in the year. So.
Yeah, and I love how well the tarot cards that you pulled for this aspect work with this idea of starting something fresh and testing out new things. Why don't you share those with us, Mel?
Yeah, and and Shawna and I were talking about this before we got on the horn with you guys, is that they're not the cards you would think of right away. I drew the cards and I'm like, let me think about this. But once I started painting that picture, oh boy, did it make sense. So here we have, the 10 of Pentacles as the focus and the 8 of Wands as the grounding card. And, you're like, Pentacles, where's Pentacles come in this mix? We got Mercury, it's all mental and airy, and Uranus, which is also airy. We got fire signs, water signs. If anything, the one thing we lack is Earth in this scenario. And I think that's why it actually paints that picture very well, because the 10 is all about, a lot of people think that 10s are completion, but they're not quite. It's almost like there's completion and then transition. And then the 10 is always that kind of transition. So this is a pause point for us, to get in line with our own material transition, am I to stay here? Is something missing? Cause if you look at the Rider-Waite cards, and it's a happy family walking to their castle. They might have everything, right? But that little boy is looking away as if something's missing, looking back as do I really? Is enough enough? Is this enough? So chances are we have reached the peak of our physical environment to some extent. And we have to, change, in order to feel more alive, like, and vital. It's just not, we've built up as much as we can build up. And it's not that we're going to tear it down. It's just, it's time to focus on our next castle in a sense. And in a fast way. Cause here we have the 8 of Wands grounding it, which, 8 of Wands, you know, those wands are in the air. You don't know if they've just been thrown. You don't know if they're about to land. Like, they're just in motion and they're going. So it's like a turnaround in a sense that might happen really fast. And that really lends itself to the nature of Uranus. So Shawna, what do you think about this card combination?
Yeah. So what comes to mind for me is, so what I'm thinking is, as you're speaking, I'm like, okay, yeah, I'm totally feeling this vibe of a transition point. And it makes me wonder if people listening might be at a point, maybe in a job where, maybe you've reached, I don't know if I want to say like the glass ceiling, but maybe you've reached a point in a certain position where you're comfortable and you've done all that you can do in this position. Maybe it's time to look at what else can you do or what else can you propose and say, okay, I'm ready to take on something different or I'm ready to try something new. Maybe it's not even work related. Maybe there is a hobby or something that you've been looking into and you've reached a certain point where it's like comfortable and there's a need to do something different. Something is missing. And what I think is really important with this transit and that these cards are calling out perfectly is that if you don't choose that new something, you know, the nature of Uranus is that something will come in. And ideally what I want for everyone is I want that to be of your choosing. I want that to be directed by you because then it's more fun and interesting and it's more empowering. It's like you get to choose instead of having something new come in that you weren't planning on. So, I would look at your life and see if there's anything where you feel way too comfortable. Is there any situation?
Yes. Yes.
Uranus is like, no, we're not going to get too comfortable here. Uranus is like, you, and not even like that you're not allowed to be comfortable, but it's more about, during this time, where are you so comfortable that it may be, breeding complacency?
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So.
Because complacency is really the enemy right now. And
yeah.
I love actually that you brought up that whole scenario of, you know, like the whole job situation. Because I actually have a good friend of mine that I was just talking to yesterday where she was like, you know, she had changes in her work. They were trying to put more responsibility on her and, she thought maybe she'd get a promotion from it, because her higher up left and here she is doing higher up's work. And so you would think you'd get the job, right? Well, no, they basically were just like, no, you don't get a promotion. You don't get a raise. You just get more work. And yes. And can be incredibly frustrating, but that's also another example in this moment of where she's capped out there, clearly, you know, and she can stay there if she wants, you know, it's a good job. But there's new considerations here and there's other things on the plate. And she has a lot to offer. So, using her as an example, you know, that might be fine, but at the same time, maybe this is the transition she needs to just push, forward somewhere else. So complacency really is, kind of the key word here, I think. And it's going to be triggered rather fast, all this change. And you might find yourself uprooted, because of your own complacency. You didn't act. So someone else is going to act for you. You know, but you know, with the wands there, that's the thing is we've been building up some type of inspiration, but we have goals, we have ambitions. It's not like we're starting fresh on this new path. It's more so that we've reached a pinnacle in, manifestation on a certain level. And we still have a lot of goals that need to be addressed to really push a lot of our own ambitions, forward. And in order to do that, you're going to have to move beyond that comfort and complacency and then just rocket on forward, stay focused on that target and focused on your purpose and just focused on goal setting, in general, because as we get into more of these transits, you're going to find that this is actually a very ambitious week. This is a week to really get in touch with your goals and where you're going and what you want out of life. There's soul searching, but also, really, really much a time for action.
Yeah, I agree. It's an exciting time.
It is. Well, so that being said, let's move into some questions for this Mercury squaring Uranus. And some questions I would ask are, where are my mental perceptions receiving a turning point? Where is the veil being lifted? I would ask, how effective am I in being able to emotionally communicate? Am I finding that certain emotionally driven thought patterns need to be changed? I would ask, do I feel that there is something missing in my life? What old patterns can be let go of to move forward with my ambitions? I would ask, how can I dispel complacency and break ground with my inspiration and goals? And then lastly, in the theme of the title, I would ask, where does my mind need to break down so I can break through? So, Mercury alert.
I love those. Those are great, Mel. Thank you.
All right. So, that let's just start by saying that was the lightest transit of the week. As we segue into the sun opposing Pluto. So our sun in Cancer is going to oppose Pluto in Capricorn. And that's going to be exact on lucky me, my birthday, Sunday, July 9th at 9:31 p.m. Pacific time. And then that's Monday, 4:31 a.m. Universal time, and 2:31 p.m. Aussie time. And that opposition is going to happen at 18 degrees Cancer and Capricorn. So Shawna, kick us in with your quote for, this opposition with Pluto.
All right. So this quote is by the ancient Chinese teacher, Confucius. And Confucius says, "Our greatest glory is not in never failing, but in rising every time we fall." And I love this so much that I'm going to read it again. Our greatest glory is not in never failing, but in rising every time we fall.
Pluto.
Yeah, exactly. So I saw this quote and I was like, oh my God, this is Sun opposite Pluto all the way, because Pluto is about, I don't want to say, I was going to say Pluto is about failing. And I'm like, oh, that sounds kind of Debbie Downer, but it's kind of true. Pluto is about deconstructing things. Pluto is like, okay, where is something not working? Where are you weak? Where are you vulnerable? And then exposing that so that the beauty of that part of you can be seen and so that you can rise again. And with the sun opposing Pluto, this is a time where it's very close to home. The sun is about your life source energy. It's about why you're here in the world, what it is that you have to give, what it is that is radiating out of you. It's that part of you that just animates your being. It's the way that you are, that spark that's you. And so, not gonna lie, this is an intense transit, sun opposite Pluto. So, it's a time where, yeah, there may be some things that break down or some things that are not working that are ready to go. And that can be literally maybe some physical things like relationships or people or situations or projects that you're working on. Maybe something isn't working and it's time to let it go. Or maybe it's more about behaviors that you have, addictions that you have that you're working through, or thought processes and that kind of thing. So it's a powerful time to allow release and then to be stronger with what it is that you're left with, what it is that is really true about you.
Yeah. Because we do have to keep in mind that, we're kind of jumping ahead a little in the transits. We're saving our full moon for last, but keep in mind that this exact opposition is going to happen the day after the full moon. So there's going to be a lot brewing to get us to this point. And I totally agree with everything Shawna said. And I do think we can kind of spin it a little positively, because let's keep in mind, just like that, what I was saying about Mercury before, Mercury is squaring this, conjuncting that, opposing this, like this isn't our first touchdown with Pluto recently. We've had Mercury oppose, we've had Mars oppose last week, and now we have the sun. And so I'm just hoping that this will be what is needed to really gain awareness, around these changes that are happening in our life, and where we need to release things, and where we really need to be honest with ourselves, essentially, because Pluto demands honesty of us, which if you've listened to previous podcasts, you realize that we've talked about this before. And so we just have to face our own selves and, what we can do to really break down certain habits that are holding us back, whether they're addictions in a sense to where we drink too much, or you're chained to a substance, or maybe there is you sleep too much, you take too many naps, or I have a bad habit of always reacting when someone says a certain thing and I get all defensive. These are just habits that are ours, that with this repetitive, obsessive, compulsive types of reactions. And that's kind of where Pluto's domain lies, in these kind of obsessive and compulsive things that we do. And that's why it kind of bulldozes its way through, is because these habits aren't good for us any longer, and, I think it's good to keep in mind the fact that Pluto's in Capricorn, and a lot of these habits we might, be trying to control, or they control us. There's like a control mechanism or element to the things that need to be released, to where we either need to let go of control in certain areas, or for some of you might have to take control. If you've been in the back seat and just not I had a period of time where I was having these dreams where I was just constantly in the back seat in my dreams, and really what my dream was telling me was that I wasn't taking control of my life. I wasn't driving my own chariot. And it was absolutely right. So now is the time, if you need to take more control of your life, do so, because that's going to really behoove you in the long run.
Yeah, I love what you say there, Mel, about are you overly controlling, or are you lacking in that department? Are you letting everyone else have control over you? And I think that's an important point with Pluto, because Pluto essentially is about power. Pluto says, okay, whether it's a strong Pluto in your natal chart or a Pluto transit like this, there's going to be themes around power that come up, and that is having an influence over others, or that's others having an influence over you. And so I'm really curious on what your relationship is with power. How comfortable do you feel with it? Do you feel like most of the situations or relationships in your life, like you are subservient in some way or submissive to the situations in your life? Or do you feel like you're always trying to assert yourself onto other things? And ideally, we have a balance. Ideally, there's a little bit of give and take, so that you're not overworking yourself in one direction, because it takes a lot of energy to always be trying to assert your power, to always be trying to take control of everything. But then at the same time, it takes a lot of energy to always be the one that is submissive, or always be the one that is at the will of everyone else. So I would just notice what that's like for you. Maybe it's different. Maybe you have different roles in different parts of your life, work versus family versus partnership. So this transit is a time for unhealthy patterns and all those ways to come up. And so the more that you're aware and the more that you can take little tiny opportunities to speak up and to say and to re-navigate, maybe even it's a dialogue that you have with a partner when something comes up. You don't have to have it all figured out, but the more open that you can be about the way that you're feeling, especially if it's a safe space like a partner or someone that you're close to, the more opportunities you'll have to make it a healthier relationship.
Yes, absolutely, because we're dealing with an opposition, and an opposition really denotes others and relationships and relating to the loved ones in our life and relating to anybody we really encounter, and most importantly relating to ourselves and breaking down shadow material, and seeing a bigger perspective and a bird's eye view. Because if you can meet that opposition in the middle, you get the whole picture, right? So, and another thing I'd like to touch on with this aspect is really, because once again, we're talking about Capricorn, and speaking from experience and having Capricorn energy, ambition, goals. Where are we asserting ourselves into our own, what it is that we want to get out of life? And so I think because we have all this energy to where, we're in the waxing phase of the moon, we're having all this Pluto, all this Jupiter, we're growing, we're starting new things, and we're, trying to get our creations off the ground. So I think we're kind of being put in check in a sense of like where our ambitions lie. Are we being too ambitious in certain situations? And we might get a little awareness of like, you're running yourself ragged, or that's not realistic, or, take your time, slow it down, or it could be you're not ambitious enough. Like you're stuck in the same place and you have that complacency that we were talking about of that transit earlier in the week. And really that lies around your inability to focus on what it is you want and your goals in life. So there might be a dose of solar awareness that comes now that is like, wait, what do I want? And what do I emotionally want? Cause here we have a sun in Cancer once again, where it's our emotional awareness. Like, what is going to make me happy emotionally? What can I strive for that will allow that, where I'm not just, doing whatever to survive, or, like there's the key part of emotional happiness, with that Cancer sun. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of different facets to, this opposition. And like I said before, this is kind of that last chain for now of those Pluto aspects. So hopefully there is going to be that breakthrough there, for release.
Yeah. And I think too, we have a little bit of support here with, we have some support from Neptune, and then we have, Jupiter expanding the situation. Jupiter's in Libra, and it'll be making a loose T-square between the Sun and Pluto. And so I see that's something that's going to continue to build as Jupiter moves forward in Libra. So, I think that just expands and creates, like you're talking about, Mel, this hunger, this desire for accomplishment. But then Neptune is trining the Sun, and then it's sextiling Pluto. And so this can actually be a really great resource. It can help us to let go where we need to. It can help us to connect with something that's greater than ourselves. And, I think that's important with Pluto too, is it's like, okay, why are you doing what you're doing? Ideally it's something that connects with your heart, and it's also something that is serving more than just yourself, especially if it's something really big that you're working on. So that's a little assistance from Neptune there. Yeah.
No, I like that. And, Pluto, aligning itself with Scorpio, it's deep down. This is deep down stuff. This is inner desire. Like that's way down in the pit of your being, and so sometimes it's not as easy to get in touch with. And that's why we have things that happen outside of us to really, allow us to focus on that inner yearning that we either submerge or, what have you. Because, Pluto's such a slow moving planet. It's the slowest one that we really track, as astrologers. And how Pluto works is it's kind of, in its retrograde cycle, and it's backing up and going forward and doing that and this and that. What it does is it basically kind of asks us to face a lot of issues. And if we face those issues, we really get down to business, a lot of times Pluto can actually bring uncalculated success. If you've done work, that's the thing, is some of us might be doing work right now, but other people might be cha-ching, I'm going places, there could be that breakdown, but if you've reappraised, if you already had that breakdown in a sense, this might be the time to really get something out of this transit, and especially from other people in that opposition. So just know that might happen, especially if you're on the end, you're like, wait, none of these bad things happened to me. I'm soaring through the sky. Well, yeah, you got kissed by the magic Pluto touch, luckily, because you've done the work. So,
good luck.
good luck with that. And, so just know there's all these different facets, to Pluto, but it really just involves, actively engaging with it and doing the work necessary to really dive deep, get into the psychological essence of ourselves, acknowledge that, uproot what's not working, and then go forward, with, a more solid grounding to stand upon.
Definitely.
So, yes. So, well, that all being said, let's talk about these cards, and what, cards really represent this opposition. And once again, I have to say, I drew them and I was like, interesting. But I have to say it really fits. And that's the 9 of Cups as the focus, and then the Strength card as the grounding. So yeah, we were talking about before, we started recording about how, a lot of us in the tarot community might forget where tarot cards came from. And we kind of get stuck in the rider weight. I went to speech class for that. I'm like Elmer Fudd sometimes. Rider weight, say that 3 times fast, cards. And so we have these images of certain, especially of the pip cards, of what they're supposed to represent based on those images. But there's a lot of that numerological essence that has been left out over time that we forget. So most people will look at this 9 of Cups and being like, it's a wish card. It's the wish that's granted. Sure, it could be. But if you're not finding your wish granted at this time, you might have to get in touch with what it is you actually wish for. Because here it is, we're getting down deep with that Pluto. And that 9 of Cups is really asking you to go within and, ask yourself, how fulfilled am I? Do I know what fulfills me? Am I looking for fulfillment outside myself in order to feel that emotional joy? Because here we have the Strength in the card in the grounding. And so that's really asking us to hold strong and get through some tough times and not to let our ego roar up and ruin things for us based off our own kind of, self-importance or feeling that pressure. So there's a lot of strength this week really in connecting with what it is we desire and what the emotional truth of what we want out of life, because people can never tell us what we want. And if we look for other people to tell us, or we look for other people's answers and then go based on what they're saying, we're not going to find happiness ever, because it's not coming from a place of truth from within. So with the 9 there, I feel like there's some type of completion in a sense, emotionally, and we have to get think what it is and re-feel what it is that really drives us to find happiness. So yeah, Shawna, what do you think about these cards?
Yeah, I really love the Strength card for this aspect, because that totally reminds me of Pluto and the Sun together in any capacity. Because Pluto is about having this it reminds me of this tree that has grown roots so strong and so deep, and it's been through all of these different storms that it's like, I'm not fucking going anywhere. It's like so strong. And so, yeah, so I think to me, the strength card is super encouraging. It's saying, you have everything that you need in order to get through anything, no matter what challenges are thrown at you this week. You have the strength to continue on. And there's nothing that you need that's outside of yourself. And then the 9, the 9 is the number of completion. And I think it's interesting that it's a 9 of cups, because cups is related to water, and we have the sun in Cancer and a water sign. So yeah, I think overall, to me, this is really encouraging. It says, okay, yes, like it's almost as if there's something that's going to be washed away, and you'll be that much stronger for it.
Yeah. Because I love how it's really asking us to get in touch with what we want. It's almost like Pluto doesn't want to take away things. It doesn't want to do bad in our life. It's saying, you haven't addressed what you really want. How can I even give you what you want if you don't know? you know? So, that's an element to it, to me. And, once again, Shawna and I can speak on this very personally, because we both, being Cancers in this area of where Pluto is, we've both been dealing with this opposition natally in our chart for me, it's been the last, 2+ years. I mean, you've been the last year or so, right? That you've kind of you've been feeling this opposition. And, I've learned personally is that you can't just barrel ahead. Really, you have to meet in the middle constantly, especially if you have challenges outside of you. And that's just the nature of that opposition. But at that same time, you just really have to get in touch with what it is that you want in order to make these things happen, and to make those compromises along the lines of that end result. Like, yeah, maybe things won't give you exactly what you want right away, but you really have to get in touch with those so that you can compromise in certain areas that still get you to that end result, of what it is you desire. So yeah. Yeah,
I love that. And I think it is so important. I've discovered this for myself. It's so important to be honest with yourself about what you really want. I love that you say that, Mel, because, that's where it's at. And when Pluto's around, if you're not being honest with yourself about what it is that you really want, if you're like, well, this is okay, it's convenient, this situation, this partner, this job, or whatever, things will happen to call to your attention where you're not being honest with yourself. And I've had this happen personally quite a bit. I have Sun squaring Pluto natally. So for anyone that has that natally, and then when there's this transit happening, we're basically being called out. We're like, if something isn't working and you're not being honest with yourself, it's like, okay, it's illuminated by the sun. So yeah, I love that.
Yeah. Oh, I feel you, girl. I got sun and moon square Pluto in a T square. I'm like Pluto fun. Personified. I'll write that book eventually. But it's totally true. And to bring that strength card back into the mix, and the idea of what we were just talking about with the opposition with the sun, and kind of meeting in that middle ground with other people, and the sun representing our ego and strength representing our ego, is really about taming our own ego about what it is we desire and how we go after it. And if we're doing it too forcefully, that's going to be off-putting for other people. But I also want to touch in real quick for any of you out there that might be dealing with any type of, addictions or substance abuse battles, because, in the traditional card, this card will show a man, surrounded by drinks and a rosy face, and all seems well and good, but, it might be time to stop going overboard in certain areas. So some of you out there might be battling, substances at this time. And so just know that, just hold that strength in there, and you have what it takes to get past that, and then find new emotional, new emotional footing around what it is you want to go after in life, and not to find that fulfillment outside of yourself, say in substances or any type of other addictive situation. Because once again, that Pluto really ties into, obsessions and compulsions. So just keep that in mind, that this could definitely be a breakthrough point, for that. So use that energy wisely, and hopefully you can get past that.
Yeah, and there's a lot of resources out there for people that struggle with that too, whether that is counseling or 12-step programs, or there's a lot out there, and I just want to acknowledge, this feels really important, that it is so hard when a person struggles with addiction, and the more that you can reach out to people, and the more that you can seek resources to help yourself, whether that's a person, a counselor, or even just an inspiring book that is helpful. Those resources are out there for you. Yes.
And once again, it's the opposition. So I'm sure there's people out there to help you as well. So let's segue into our questions for this Sun opposition with Pluto. And some things to take away and ask yourself as this transit progresses, because you're going to feel it the whole week. This is a slow moving thing. It's building, and it'll apex on Sunday. So I would ask myself, where am I gaining awareness regarding how honest I am with myself? Regarding how honest I am with others? I would ask, how emotionally fulfilled am I? What changes do I need to make to increase that? I would ask, what do I really desire and wish for? Am I letting that be known? I would ask, do I have the strength necessary to pursue my goals and ambitions, to really get what I want? And then lastly, I would ask, where can I take responsibility for my life and initiate my own renovation and regeneration?
I love those.
It's a lot of food for thought there. This week in general. So now we move on to our highlight of the week, and the much talked about full moon in Capricorn, which is going to be exact on Saturday, July 8th at 9:07 p.m. Pacific time, which will also be Sunday, 4:07 a.m. Universal time. And then Sunday, 2:07 p.m. Aussie time. And that's going to be happening at 17 degrees Capricorn. And this full moon is going to conjunct Pluto that we were just talking about. It's going to have that square to Libra, and there's going to be a little help from Neptune and Pisces there. So there's a lot of action around this full moon. So Shawna, kick us in with your quote that you have.
So this quote is also by the Chinese teacher Confucius. And Confucius says, "The will to win, the desire to succeed, the urge to reach your full potential. These are the keys that will unlock the door to personal excellence." And so I chose this quote because this has got Capricorn written all over it. Capricorn is, especially the moon in Capricorn, is about going after long-term goals. It has this ambition, it has this will and desire to succeed, and then it has the patience to go through that process. So this full moon, to me, is quite intense, because it's not just full moon in Capricorn that's already like I'm gonna get some shit done, and I'm gonna accomplish some things, and I'm gonna go after my goals. But on top of that, the moon is at 17 degrees Capricorn, so it's sitting within a degree of Pluto. And then Mars is at 22 degrees of Cancer while this is happening, which is just a few degrees away from the sun. And then of course Mel mentioned, that we have, Neptune and Jupiter in the mix too. And so, just Pluto and Mars, to me, is a very dynamic kind of energy.
Yes.
there's wanting all over this. Pluto wants. Pluto has deep, deep, deep desires. And then Mars is like, I fucking want it now. Like, hurry up, and I'm going to actually take actions towards it. So, this may be a time to really jump in, both feet in to go after what it is that you want. It may also be a time to check yourself and to be like, all right, why am I doing this? Is this going back to the sun opposite Pluto just a little bit? Am I doing this because it's what I really want? Is it going to fulfill me over the long term? Or am I just trying to get recognition? Am I just trying to get something for the sake of having power and success, in quotes, or is it really going to fulfill me? So those are all questions that may come up around this time, but I love the term from this quote, personal excellence. I think that's beautiful.
Yeah. God, there's so much I could say about all that. Yes. Well, I'm going to start with saying about bringing that Mars into the mix real quick. And I didn't really realize that it's at 22 degrees. And I love Christopher Witecki's step astrology system. And 22 is like the master number for breakdown breakthrough. So I'm very interested in seeing how this Mars really plays into everything. Cause keep in mind, this is happening the day before that sun opposite Pluto. So all that stuff, all that considerations we just talked about, this is going to apex before those things come into place, or really apex to get those things into place. So, and just a quick mention, we are deeming this transit building character. And let me start off by saying, I know this full moon. I was born on this full moon. And in fact, my birthday is, and my solar return chart is recreating my birth on this full moon. So if anybody can speak about it, it's me. And it's exact same degree. And I'll tell you anything you want to know about this full moon in Capricorn, because Shawna's right by saying it's intense. It is intense, and it's so intense around your ambitions. And I love how you pointed out, right before I, transitioned over to speaking on this, you pointed out about people doing things, for the right reasons. And a lot of times you can be blinded by ambition. And I can speak from that personally. Where you're blinded by ambition and you almost do whatever you can in order to make this thing happen. But really, sometimes it's not even what you really want. It's just you get so focused on the goal and you just want this recognition so bad and to be noticed for something and seen, and like it's a type, this full moon, living with this full moon, this is a type A personality all the way. It's just the energy that's there. You just want to succeed. You're emotionally have everything in you that drives you forward, and it's where emotions can break down, because we're talking about a full moon here. And a lot of times there could be breakdown in order to release something, because it's the time that, it's apexing this energy, but it's doing so that we can let something go and then move forward in the cycle. So I would really ask, just getting in touch with those ambitions and goals, and how ambitious am I? And am I putting my emotional power behind it? Am I getting too emotionally wrapped up in what it is I'm trying, where it is I'm trying to goal, where it is I'm trying to goal. That works. So it's really trying to find a balance, in a sense, about what you're trying to strive for, and having having the emotional patience to deal with it. Because keep in mind, this is an earth sign. And actually, when we have full moons in earth, things can get really real. But at the same time, I think those are almost the easiest full moons to deal with, because they're more practical of nature. If there's anything that lends itself best to emotions, is a little practicality. Because logic and that Aries can detach enough to where we're not addressing it. And that fire kind of energy can roll right past without ever, but the earth really takes a second and is like, am I being practical about this? Is this, am I getting all huffed up for, what's the reality here? So I feel that is kind of like a beacon of light in this transit, just a tad. It's like getting down to earth and being practical about what it is you're trying to achieve. Cause we're all very driven right now. To to some extent. We're either very driven or we're staying in stagnation. And there's no balance there, because here this full moon is really trying to balance, you know, are you trying to succeed too fast, or are you just not addressing any of your goals and ambitions and you're staying stuck? So that's
this
first thing I would say.
Yeah. And as you're speaking about it, Mel, I'm just really feeling the cardinal energy of Cancer and Capricorn. Both of these, and like Cancer and Capricorn, what's interesting about this combination is they're both very much focused on security. They're both very much focused on having the needs met, and doing that by going out into the world and getting what it is that one needs, and then taking what one needs and then bringing it back to home. And so it's like, yeah, there's lots of energy here, and it's about, it's not about like, are you going to do something about it? It's like, yes, something will be done. Like, of course. But it's like, okay, how can I distribute my energy? How can I direct my energy in a way that, that honors my values, in a way that honors who I am at my core? So that it's like intentional and not just like, all right, I'm going to take over the world, you know, like,
yeah.
That kind of thing. Cause it's an intense combo we got going on out in the cosmos. And then for you to live that, it's quite dynamic.
Yeah. Tell me that. It's true because, you know, essentially, this full moon is a check and balance. We have that in our government with the whole, you know, that's how you check and balance power. And, ideally, yes, yes, yes. So there, that is the thing, is like, here we are once again talking about power and authority. And there's two ways that we can look at this. We can look at it like, our own inner authority, like how, like how on board are we, emotionally with being able to be our own disciplinary and our own authority, and knowing what it is that we want and being able to go after that, and et cetera. But at the same time, here we have this full moon that's really putting a huge spotlight on what we try to control in life, and especially emotional control. Because that's really a tactic, especially of the Capricorn moon, and especially of Scorpio energy as well, because keep in mind that Pluto is right on top of this moon. So this moon has a complete controlling aspect to it, to really shine some light on areas that we try to control that we can't, or areas we try to manipulate and we can't. And we have to really release that and let that go, in this full moon cycle, because if anything, Pluto's going to teach us what we can and can't control. And speaking from experience, I spent a lot of my life trying to control situations, sometimes overtly, sometimes behind the scenes. And, you know, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. I mean, yeah, I can control myself and my own reactions, because that's essentially what a Capricorn moon does, is it's constantly controlling its own emotional reactions. And that's why people can think that we're a little cold or a little calculating, and we're out for things and not, you know, emotionally considerate, which is kind of true, because on this Cancer Capricorn axis, it really talks about the idea of unconditional love versus conditional love. And so here this Capricorn is constantly giving you a conditional love, you know, like, hey, can you do me a favor? Sure. What are you going to do for me? Or, hey, you know, it's just all these kind of like, yeah, that sounds good, but, there has to be some type of return, you know, like I have to get something out of it in order for this to be worth my while, in a sense.
Yeah.
And so there's the conditions that happen with the Capricorn moon.
And, you know, I think that is actually it can be one of the benefits of the Capricorn moon, because it balances out that Cancerian nature. The Cancer is like, I'll give everything and I'll take care of you forever. You want to, you know, stay at my house, you know, no big deal.
Yeah.
But then Capricorn is like, all right, listen, like, why are we what's the purpose? Why are we doing this? How is this, like, Capricorn people, they always want to know what's the means to the end. Like, okay, what is the purpose of this action, of this conversation, like all of these things. So it's nice when it balances in that way. But yeah, the shadow side for sure is, being kind of almost like, now that I'm thinking about it, yeah, I have known one Capricorn moon person where, like, there was never something that she would do unless she got something equally immediately in return. And, I think sometimes that can be good, but sometimes, it can be a hindrance to relationships.
To relationships mostly, and it's true. Yeah, you can stay at my house, but you got to pay rent, like that's essentially what's happening here with this Capricorn energy. So yeah, there's lots of, it's just kind of a conditional thing. So we got to ask ourselves, where we've been, conditioning certain things in our lives, to where we maybe don't give enough because we're always expecting in return, or maybe we give too much and we do need to get some things in return. Like, once again, we're going back to this kind of habit oriented pattern. So all these things that we're talking about could be wrapped up in a habit of yours, or wrapped up in some type of obsessive compulsive, action that happens, because that's the kind of nice thing about Mars being there, because he's revved up to get some action, and it's at that breakthrough degree. So maybe this is what can break us free from old habits and start having different actions in our life that really are aligned with what it is that we're trying to do in our own inner authority and our own goals and ambitions. So I'm hoping that there's like this silver lining in a sense to all these transits to really just get us on point with what it is we want, where we're going, how we see it, and just be our own authority, because that's what Capricorn and Cancer, because it's cardinal energy. The cardinal is pushing forward, and it's that leadership energy. So yeah, I feel like this is kind of like an ultimate release moon in a sense, with Pluto there, because we do our, meditations to where we can release during the full moon. Like, that's a common, witch practice of sorts. But really we have so much to release right now with that Pluto there. If we just allow ourselves to do so. So,
and I love I love the tarot cards that came up for this particular moon. And, before we mention those, I also want to say too that sometimes to release things, it is like this process. So I always think of the full moon of being the point where things come up, especially the days leading up to it. So maybe I would pay attention to how you're feeling Friday and Saturday, and like just the matter of things coming up and the feelings coming up and it feeling intense or maybe feeling overwhelmed. That process in itself is a part of the releasing. So it's not always like you have to, how do I say this? Like, I think some people have this vision of what releasing is really like, and they imagine it being like where they feel intense or anguish, and then the next moment it's gone. And I'm sorry to say it's not necessarily like that. Maybe for some people it is, but in my experience, it's more like something comes up. It's like a wave swelling and you feel it, and it feels like, oh my gosh, I feel really intense, or I feel agitated, or I feel anguish. And then it flows down like the wave washing onto shore. And so it is more gradual. And the more that you can allow things to come up and allow them to be there and to be okay, that actually is the releasing process. Yes,
that makes sense, because we're talking about an emotional wave here. We're talking about the moon. And, like our just, we're once again, just really quick before we get back into that tarot, we're just being challenged with our own emotional honesty around what it is we're trying to release here. So feel that wave as Shawna was describing, and just get honest with yourself about what you're feeling. Find the truth in that, and then just let it go. And like she said, especially if these are big issues in our lives, like certain things can just be released and then they're gone forever and you just had your moment with them. But if this is a karmic issue in your life that keeps coming up, like you're going to have to release your whole life and you're just releasing like one little piece at a time in order to hopefully by the end of your existence have dealt with it enough to where it's incredibly manageable. But, that being said, like, okay, so let's talk about these tarot cards, because I think this is going to paint a whole nother, facet to this, full moon that we're going to be feeling. Shawna had mentioned that we might be feeling it a couple days earlier, and who knows, we might even get that energy flowing around that Mercury square Uranus transit on Thursday, especially since Mercury's in Cancer. So the full moon tarot, we have, Two of Cups as the focus, which if you've listened to previous episodes, you know this has been a highlight for this Cancer season. And then the Four of Pentacles as the grounding. And so here we have, the focus of, heartfelt shared emotion, and coupled with the grounding of stability versus stagnation. It's a fine line being stable in something, being stable in a relationship, being stable in a way of sharing with someone else and emoting, and then being stagnant in how that goes, is our relationships with others going nowhere because we're not making changes within our own lives? Or are we in a stable foundation? Like, which is totally the thing with the fours and the Four of Pentacles, or any four really, is like, it's a landing point. It's a stopping point. It's got that stable four energy, you can put a box around it, but you don't want, you could like hang out there, but you don't want to live there. Like that's not the end result. And that's why it can breed, stagnancy, is because, you're like, yeah, this is pretty comfortable. I feel stable here. Everything's good. I got what I need. I'm got my possessions, this, that, and the other, but you're really going nowhere, so there's this element.
You're just living in a box.
You're just living in a box. You got all your fun stuff, but you can't get out of that box. So, are we staying stuck in the old way of doing things, an old relationship patterns, like that? This is something that's really coming to light in this full moon. So, Shawna, what do you think about this card combination?
Yeah, I was really struck by both of these. So, what jumps out at me initially is the Two of Cups, the partnership card, and because it is an opposition. It's the full moon, it's balancing, and it's saying, okay, how am I going to navigate between these two different energies inside of myself and then also in my partnerships? This makes me think of a conversation that I was having with someone this week, where we were talking about how we're all made up of these different parts, right? Like I have a part of myself that's really optimistic and thinks that things are going to be amazing. And then I also have another part of myself that is more reality based and sometimes pessimistic. And so I've been noticing that when I'm in one of those, then oftentimes one of my partner's relationship, whatever, that the other people in my life are taking on the other part of that. So when I'm really optimistic, sometimes the other people in my life are more real or pessimistic even. Or sometimes when I'm more pessimistic, the people around me are super optimistic. And so, this full moon and the tarot remind me that it's like, okay, who are we being at this point in time? What are the roles that we're playing? And, I think it's natural to play different roles with people, but ideally we have this sense of integration. We have the four stability where we can be all the parts of ourselves and there can be some type of integration there. There can be some type of stability, and so that we don't get stuck in that box of being one way all the time. Ideally we can change and flow with the roles.
Exactly. You know, because the Four of Pentacles a lot of times shows a man that's holding these 4 discs and he's kind of hoarding them in a sense. He's like, I got these discs, you know? So, you know, there's sometimes a sense of greed around here, selfishness. And so you can ask yourself, you know, have you been a little selfish with your emotions or a little greedy around, you know, what it is that you want in the relationship? Or maybe you've been shielding yourself emotionally and not able to open up. Like you've been holding everything so close, to where you can't really give that heartfelt connection to someone else. Because this card really, ties into possessiveness, and trying to possess something. And that's where we say stuck, is because we want to hold on to this thing that we have. But it's, you know, like, I like the writer Andre Gide says, all you have been able to give possesses you. So,
Ooh.
you know, if you're not able to give and like share those things and open yourself up emotionally, like just that kind of Capricorn moon nature. The Capricorn moon really speaks to me for this Four of Pentacles. You know, you're gonna stay stuck. You're not giving to anybody. You're like staying in this own little world and it's just possessing you more and more, these feelings, and you're kind of backing yourself into a corner, you know? So part of it is really about realizing that the things that you have and the things that you possess, whether they're real or they're traits of yours or what you have to share, you know, like your talents in a sense, you know, they gain the most value when you're able to share them with someone else. So don't hold your cards to your chest and like keep everything to you, you know, like, because yeah, that's just like a breeding, you know, like an environment where you have no movement, of stagnant air and just nothing's happening. So open up and share that, you know, like get out of that kind of Scrooge mentality where, you know, like keeping it all to yourself, like just, you know, just open up, and give it a chance and like see where the next manifestation of what it is you're trying to build with another person or even emotionally will be for you. Because if you allow yourself to open that box up and then move on to that 5, then you're able to now like really just move on from that spot. So that's kind of what I would say about these tarot cards. Yeah. So definitely some food for thought, there on how you can open up more.
Yeah. I love that. Let it flow.
Let it flow. Let it flow. So that being said, let's talk about some questions for this full moon, some things to take away and think about, as this is happening on Saturday. So some questions I would ask myself, I would say, by releasing that which no longer works, where am I building character? How well am I relating emotionally to others? Have I been so wrapped up in my own ambitions that my relationships are becoming stagnant? I would ask, am I stuck in my old ways of doing things? In old ways of sharing or relating to others? Is my life stable or stagnant? I would ask, how can I let go of any fear or lack of trust that may be blocking me? And then lastly, I would ask, where does my heart need to open up more so I may move on? Moving on.
Moving on.
We're all just moving on. Yep, moving on, moving up. Yeah, that's Capricorn for you.
Yeah, exactly.
So, well, that being said, I think we've learned a lot here today, and we definitely have a very active Astro week coming up. You know, we've discussed Mercury and Cancer squaring Uranus and Aries, which we've deemed emotional breakdown / breakthrough. We've got this Sun in Cancer opposing Pluto in Capricorn, which we have as self-renovation and regeneration. And then lastly, this full moon in Capricorn, which we're building character with. So yeah, Shawna, what action items do you have for everybody to take away this week?
Yes. So I have a few different action items for you this week. Number one that is most important is Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You can do this each day or just pick one day. Set aside some time to do some journaling. And I know that this may seem like not a deal or a little bit silly, but it's super duper important whenever there's a full moon. it's really helpful to process things. And so especially if you do this even earlier in the week or Thursday and Friday especially, it's going to help you not feel so intense on the full moon. I have a lot of people that message me that are like, oh my gosh, I feel like a crazy person every full moon. And I always recommend this. It helps a lot to do some free writing, do some journaling, just even if it's for a few minutes. So that's action item number 1. Action item number 2 is I would also write down, and you don't have to journal about this, but maybe just write down an idea or a few sentences about something it is that you're struggling with right now. What's a challenge that you have? Write that down. And then I'm curious, you can write about this or not, but I'm curious what your tendencies are with this situation. What I love about astrology and the way that Mel and I approach it is we look at it like, okay, these are all of the potentials. This is what's happening in the cosmos. And then how does that relate to you personally with your tendencies? What do you normally do? What's your normal reaction? And I wonder this week if there's something that you can do differently. If you can go outside your normal behavior pattern. For those of you that are yogis or follow yoga philosophy, they call these patterns samskaras, where it's like this little groove where you go down the same path, you walk down the same path over and over again, and then it creates like a rut, kind of like we were talking about earlier, that 4 of Pentacle rut. And so how can you like walk outside and create a new pathway? So again, that's something, maybe something pops to mind when you write this down, maybe something comes during the week, but that's an excellent action item for this week with all this Pluto energy. How can you go, and Uranus, how can you go outside of your normal pattern, your normal tendency, and do something different?
I love that. And I love the writing down of it too, because in a sense, when we write these ideas down, it's kind of a form of a release in itself. We're releasing it to this paper and we're looking at it, like that opposition in a more objective way. Because when you write something down and you reread it, it's like you're looking at it a little different. So I love that. I think that's great.
Because I'm a big advocate of daily journaling. If anyone does the artist way, they know the morning pages. And I've personally found you can only tell yourself the same shit over and over again for so long. So like every day, if you're like writing down, oh my gosh, I'm having this problem, like you start to get fed up with yourself and you're like, oh my gosh, I can't keep doing this. And then something changes. It's really almost magical how it works.
Oh my God. I love it. Perfect. It's perfect. All right. So yeah, we have a lot of things to take away this week, I think. With food for thought with these transits, the questions, the action items. There's so many ways that we can really get in touch with this energy. And I think it has a lot to offer if we're willing to engage with it. So just to wrap it all up, we're going to share with you where you want, if you need to find us, it is an intense week. You can find me at energeticprinciples.com. And you can also find me on Instagram at Energetic Principles, where I do daily IG advice with some fun pictures and such. And I do still have, my moon horoscopes, Cancer horoscopes up on YouTube for this month if you want to connect with that energy, because I did center the horoscopes around these actual transits that we're talking about. So that's where you can find me. Shawna, where can they find you?
You can find me at neofeminine.com. And you can also find me on Instagram, Neo Feminine Astrology.
Yes. And then we have some promotions going on too. If you're local, I do some park tarot throughout the summer if you want to schedule a session here in San Diego. And I believe, Shawna, you have, you're doing some Instagram readings, right? On certain days, you'd advertise a really good special. It's like $25 to get a question asked.
Yeah, it's super fun. It's kind of basically like getting instant astrologer to text you.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, it's super fun. So So it's what's cool is we have different options for people. If you want to get a little Insta something just texted to you, you can get that from me. That's $25. And then if you want something in person from Mel with her mad tarot skills, you can do that in person in San Diego at the park, which is really beautiful and fun.
Yeah. It's been a lot of fun, I have to say. So, well, all right, everybody. So, we are sending you lots of love, and wishing you the best of luck this week. Right, Shawna?
Yes. Lots of love, lots of luck. Get some shit done.
Yes, absolutely. So thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. Until next time, may the stars be with you.
Namaste.